You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we are here to talk about England's awesome, heroic, fantastic, stunning victory over India in the first test at Headingley. Ben Duckett take a bow, Joe Root take a bow, Jamie Smith, you can probably get a little bow in there as well.
A curtsy.
Yeah, an unbelievable. And Zach Crawley. Zach Crawley gets a bow. He can bow. Lots of bows from England. An amazing day for the batters. India will be wondering how they let that one slip. And we'll be talking about all of that. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Rowe Brown. How are you doing, Max?
I'm great because Test cricket is the best. And that game proves why. Forget all the ones that last 5 days and end in boring draws that are meaningless. That is exactly what you want from a game of Test cricket. It's live and kicking, I'm telling you.
That was. I mean, if you want to just start with what a spectacle that was, that you can't really ask for much more from a test match. I don't think. We had countless centuries. Was it 7 centuries? Was it 8 centuries?
Yeah,
7 and 99. We had a massive run chase. We had flurries of wickets here and there. We had Bumrah bowling fantastically in the first innings. We had all of the big players turn up and do
threats of rain as well.
And I think, genuinely,
is complete without a little bit of weather shenanigans.
Yeah, exactly. We had the rain in play. Umpires, match referee on the pitch. What does he do? Nobody really knows. Carries around an umbrella. A fine for Rishabh Pant. If you had to taking a look through those two teams and say I want to see something special from all these players, arguably the only one of all of those great players that didn't turn up and do something spectacular is Jadeja. Like every other player has done something like brilliant of the names. So yeah, unreal test as a starting point. As another starting point, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you click like and subscribe. Drop us a message in the chat. Let us know where you think it went wrong for India or where you think it went right for England. And make sure you click that subscribe button. And the same goes to you if you're over on Spotify or Apple or Pocket Casts or one of the other apps that you listen to podcasts on. Make sure you're following along with the Cricket Podcast content. Traditionally, when we get days like this, the view count on YouTube tends to be a little lower. That's where our Indian audience base tends to consume the podcast. But if you're over there, I think commiserations. India came to play. They played really well, and had they caught the ball at any stage, maybe through that match, they might have won. I mean, even the route charts, even the route charts near the end, that would have been a very nervy last couple of hours for England. Max, do you want to summarise day 5 as best you can?
Sure. Well, today, arguably, it's a story of two sides that have been going at it for so long. They don't know what the fuck they're doing, Jack. But, despite the moments where that seemed the case, eventually a few people did know what they were doing. One of those people was Ben Duckett, who started the day alongside Zach Crawley, shepherding England through to lunch without losing a wicket, keeping things going, negotiating a tough first hour where it looked a darn sight trickier than it had done to bat at any stage in the Test match so far. And putting on 188 for the first wicket was a pretty bold opening salvo to get England ahead of the game. India bit back, Prashad Krishna taking 2 quick wickets with a renewed spell of skillful bowling to open the game back up before Joe Root came to calm things down. But again, wickets fell. It was the Lord this time, burgling 2 wickets in 2 balls. And while the kids were all fighting over who was going to get the next turn to play on the PlayStation, Daddy Root was there to shepherd everything home, calm everyone down, and alongside Jamie Smith, who blasted a few sixes off Ravi Jadeja at the end to get England over the line. They saw out the final moments with little difficulty. The odd moment here or there, a couple of skittish moments, but mostly very assured, and England made their way to a very, very, very impressive chase. But, for all the good England did, like you said, Jack, India will be brewing missed chances.
Yeah, big time. First team might be the first time India has ever had a game where they scored 5 individual centuries and lost. They scored more than 800 runs in the match. Was it 880? Right? No, it was a bit less than that. Let's just say 800. Why be specific? More than 800 runs in the match, and lost. Dropped apparently more catches than any team has ever dropped in England. I don't know if I believe that one. That was a cryptid stat.
Yeah, I mean,
unlikely.
if you've put up 835 runs by the looks of things, and lost, then obviously the other team has scored more than 835 runs. So that means they've been batting for quite a long time, and that means that you've had ample opportunity to drop catches. So I can, given also it's not that common that you'll get a game where between the two sides you score over 1,600 runs. I can believe that as a stat. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I would like to know what the second in the list is and when it happened, but we don't get that.
I would like to know that as well.
They just give you a number and you have to trust it. If you know more, you have to pay.
Probably England v Australia at some point. I would
1921.
And of course, India had the world's best bowler by far, who took 5 for 83 in the first innings, playing for them. Ended up bowling 43 and a half overs in the match. Jasprit Bumrah couldn't break through in the second innings. Max,
washed.
Let's start with England. How epic was this run chase on the final day?
It was
of 1 to your favourite.
It was huge. I suppose in terms of run chases, I'm thinking back to Hyderabad, but that wasn't a run chase, was it? That was a turning around of the game. So I suppose that doesn't necessarily count, even though I'd probably rank that marginally higher. And then you've obviously got Edgbaston that was harked back to quite often. I think I would put this above that one. And then below Headingley, where Ben Stokes did his nonsense on his own against Australia, because that was a freakish occurrence that will never happen again. So it's somewhere between obscenely good and, I don't know, all-time unbeatable things that will ever happen. It's up there. It was a really impressive performance, and the fact that they've done it with 5 wickets to spare and a good 20 overs left in the game as well is also quite the feat. I rate it very highly, Jack.
And then if we drill down to an individual level, Ben Duckett, was it 149? I don't quite get 150.
Probably in the same bracket, right? I'd say probably not the Ollie Pope in Hyderabad, because that just came from absolutely nowhere, and probably not the Ben Stokes at Headingley because he did it all in his own. But it slots in between those, slots just below those two, I think, quite neatly, because it doesn't happen without him, does it? Let's be honest. That was it was as close to a one-man show as you get when there are a couple of other 50s in play, but it was supreme, especially the way he went about it. Obviously, he was dropped on 97 by Jaiswal, one of the many drops of the Test match. But aside from that, I think the way he went about it was impressive and showed the different sides of his game that we don't always see, like Ben Duckett, when's he ever left a ball kind of thing. And last night he was pretty circumspect, saw out the last few overs without any problem. This morning, the first hour, it was tricky. The ball was doing a little bit. India were very good with their lines and lengths. They were causing England a few problems, and he and Zach Crawley kept it pretty solid. And then when Bumrah and Siraj were off, then it went to Shardul Thakur and Prashad Krishna sharing the ball as the first change. He sprung to life a bit, and the thing that I found most impressive, and again with all these things, there's a flip side to whether India did the right things, but you can only negotiate what bless you. You can only negotiate what's put in front of you at the time. The thing I found particularly impressive with Ben Duckett was that after the Krishna Shardul Thakur experiment didn't go so well, and Jadeja belatedly entered the game, that was like pretty much the last gambit Shubman Gill played I suppose, at any point, and he kind of ruthlessly took that away from him with the reverse sweeping, and the way he played those shots, it robbed India of, I suppose, the control that they were looking for by trying to tie up an end with Jadeja. So it was really like there was a lot of nous and strategy to the way he played, as well as obviously the skill and the weight of runs that I think kind of set the day up, I suppose, with how India behaved and how they responded to the way England batted and the way things unfolded.
Look, I'll tell you what will come out of this match. Like, one, England are going to be insufferable for 2 or 3 days. Like, stay away from all England cricket content, I would say, unless you're really into the whole baseball thing. They are going to be so high on their own supply, it's ridiculous. However, they do deserve quite a lot of credit, I think, from a batting perspective. Like we can, we've talked about the Stokes decision at the toss, still probably the wrong one. Like they've managed to come out with the victory, but it probably, I think we were sort of saying probably the wrong decision, but not like as bad a decision. It wasn't staggering, as Michael Vaughan said. It was just, it was like a 60-40 you got wrong.
They won, right?
The way they played from halfway through the last session last night through to 30 minutes ago, I think does show a fairly significant amount of growth in terms of their understanding of how to go about what it is that they're trying to do. Yeah. Like if you look at how to win cricket matches in England, we talked a lot about this with KL Rahul and how well he played. You need a plan and you need to be aware of the conditions that you're playing in and how those conditions changed. And I think if you look at Duckett's innings, and I think you can say probably the same for Crawley as well, they understood that last night it wasn't going to be easy to bat. You were going to have a rested Bumrah ready to go. And they understood as well the first hour of today was going to be tricky. And in both of those spells, England did not score quickly. I mean, Zach Crawley probably, it's a long time since Zach Crawley scored runs as slowly as he did in this Test match. He played it well, and I think you'd definitely say the same about Duckett early in his innings. They got Bumrah out the way. They put big overs into Bumrah. They ruined the ball. I mean, India was borderline farcical. I think there was one period where they asked for the ball to be changed 3 times in 3 balls.
Yeah.
But that's what you've got to do. You've got to recognise if you're the batsman there, your job is basically make that ball soft, put overs into Bumrah, wait for India to go to plan B, and wait for the weather basically to move slightly into your favour, because weather was a factor all day today. Like there were periods where it was really dark and really difficult to bat, and in those periods, by and large, England reined it in. We saw Stokes blocking Bumrah for ages at one point as an example of that. However, when things turned around and when they did have their opportunities, they were pretty ruthless. They ruined Prasidh Krishna's day. Shardul Thakur picks up a couple of wickets, but that's really all he's got to show for it. And Duckett against Jadeja, Duckett came with a plan that Jadeja didn't have an answer to. Or didn't have an answer to for a very
until far
time.
Too late, right? But that kind of reflected the whole of the India approach today, didn't it?
I think so, but I do think you have to give a lot of credit to England for not doing what I think a lot of people expected them to do, but also deploying the skills that they have at the right moments. Like there were overs where England clearly were trying to dominate the bowlers. There were spells where England were clearly trying to dominate the bowlers, and they picked those moments very, very well. I mean, how many overs did they win? How many overs to spare did they have? 15 overs? I think they were just into the theoretical last hour when Jamie Smith smashed Jadeja all over the place to knock off the last 20 odd runs.
Yeah.
They won that with, they didn't hang about, but they also, I think, maybe Harry Brook
4.5 and over the
Harry Brook aside,
chasing innings.
I know arguably Zach Crawley and his shot to get out. I thought England were exceptional. I think it's the best I've seen them bat for a very, very long time. We should talk about India though. I think like England did bat very well. I do think though, Max, there's a few things at play. One, I think India's tactics were pretty poor.
Yeah.
2, I think Bumrah looked really gassed, like did not bowl well. 3, the rest of the India bowling attack probably is as bad as we think. And then 4, England probably still needed to ride their luck quite significantly.
Yeah.
Make sure, like, be lucky that edges didn't go to hand. Be lucky that the close LBWs were going over the top. Be lucky to be dropped a couple of times. Like, you don't chase 380 without quite a lot of marginal moments falling in your favour.
Yeah.
Where do you think, if we move away from the exceptional planning and batting of England, where do you think that the game was won more on those margins?
Yeah, well, there's a few things. I think obviously the most obvious one is the drops, isn't it? Jaiswal with 3, was it in the end? One a bit tough, but there was a pretty simple one. I think was it Harry Brook in England's first innings. Ben Duckett was dropped. There were too many to list them all, but every single, I think pretty much everyone has had an outcome that's meant that England have, they've let someone off the hook, and England have managed to catch up a result. If India take those catches, and in fairness, it's not like they're all half chances. A good 50% of those, I think you're taking more than 50% of the time, and that's that's basically you're doing what you need to do to take a wicket, and then you're not finishing the job. And if you keep dropping catches like that, it means you have to take 30, 40 wickets in a test match instead of 20, and that's a lot harder to do. So that's one obvious thing. But I think, and probably today was where it was most obvious, just the whole energy and the way India, I don't know, sort of projected themselves onto the game. I think this morning there was an hour where it was tough for England. They did really well to see it through. There were a couple of moments that maybe could have gone the other way, a nick here, a player missed there, whatever, but that always happens. You don't expect to get a wicket with every full shot, and England saw it through the first hour. But there was, when I was watching it, I was thinking, if I'm India, it's frustrating and you want to have taken a wicket, but there's enough encouragement there to make me think this is not going to be an easy chase, and we are well in this. And they fell to pieces. They lost the plot. They were moaning about the ball, like you said, every second. There was, glum faces. There was a lack of sort of energy and a lack of sort of, I don't know, fire and desire to try and put England under pressure. So that kind of, it set the tone for everything else that follows. You had I think Jadeja came into the game far too late today. There was the period where Shardul Thakur and Krishna shared, was it 6 or 8 overs, both bowling at the same time, which was the point that kind of allowed England to counter-attack and get a little bit more on top of things. And then there was just a general sense of, like, we don't have a plan, so what we're going to do is wait for Jasprit Bumrah to come and do some magic, and it didn't happen. And when that didn't happen, they had nowhere to turn. So it was a little rudderless, and I think India probably would have benefited from, I mean, like you say, a bit more of a plan. Like they didn't go for the short ball at any point, which was probably worth a go, at least for a couple of overs. It nearly got Ben Duckett, and who was dropped on 97 when that happened. And I thought that might be a catalyst for them to try that a bit. Never happened. They didn't try enough different things, like the Jadeja bowling wide to Ben Stokes, and he tried about 10 reverse sweeps before he eventually got out, which all went wrong. That came too late, and maybe that could have been something they tried at Ben Duckett a bit earlier. Lots of things that they were either too late to do or just didn't do, that maybe it's Shubman Gill's first crack at it, and he's got plenty of time to learn, and he seems like the kind of guy who's open to learning and trying to develop his captaincy. So you can't be too harsh on them. But I think there was a point halfway through where someone on comms was like, well, if you look at this game and you didn't know who was captaining, the answer is KL Rahul, because he's the one who's organised everyone. That isn't a good look. Even if it is your first game as captain, that is not a good, not a good set of optics to be giving off. So yeah, I think there's a lot for India to look at and work on, because it was disappointing. It was very, very disappointing from them. I expected a lot more fight, and they did roll over a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think on Shubman Gill, Like one, and it's the same caveat as yesterday. You're only as good as your bowlers, and India's bowlers aren't very good. Like that, I don't really know how else to say that. There's not really a nice way to say it, but they're not, are they? Like,
Yeah, I mean, we were
bowl
saying
all day on a
Krishna,
pitch.
he bowled quite well. He went for 6 and over. We were saying, like, he was.
Yeah. Siraj bowled all right. Didn't take any wickets.
Yeah.
Bumrah bowled tight. Wasn't actually very threatening, bar a couple of magic balls. But Bumrah, obviously, in different circumstances, is good. But you can't expect, like, this is like an iron law of human physiology. You can't expect a guy to have the same amount of output the 43rd set of reps as the first set of reps. Like and you're like, the guy's clearly going to be exhausted. I mean,
he looked it in the field.
You need more than that. You need more than that. And if you're Shubman Gill, you have to, those two factors you have to bear them in mind. I think you've got to use Bumrah a bit less than that. Like, you can't just use Bumrah every time you want a wicket, or every time the session's coming to an end. I'll give Bumrah 3 overs, and then he'll open the next session. You'll have 3 overs there. Like, you have to think about, like, when is this guy actually going to take wickets? We've got the new ball, then you want to have another spell, like a decent spell where the ball's fairly new, and then you want to see if anyone can get the ball reversing, and if they can, you give him another spell of 3 or 4 overs. Then you don't bowl him willy nilly 3 overs here and there. Like, it's a bizarre way of managing the best player in the world. Never tried bounces, as you said. That works against England. We've seen it work a bunch of times.
We've seen it work in this game.
They do have egos. They will try and take it on. You've got 370 runs on the board. You should have been doing that at least after lunch. Didn't at any point try and bore a batter out. And we've seen that work. We've seen that work quite well against Brook. I mean, I know Brook.
Well, they didn't need to. He pulled him out with 1 ball.
There was at no point did you have sort of 8 players on one side of the wicket and a bowler bowling 6th stump line and like trying to force the batter into doing something that, either accepting he wasn't going to score any runs and up the run rate and put pressure on that way, or force the batter to play across the line and hope that one goes up in the air. You don't have to do this forever, but like, just try it for 4 or 5 overs, see what happens, see how the batter reacts. We didn't see him really cycle through the bowlers I thought there'd be a period where we saw like 1 or 2 over spells just to get people off balance, like you would in a T20 or like you would in an ODI game. If there was a partnership, you wouldn't just be like, oh well, we'll do 5 from one end with this guy and 5 from that end with the other guy. We didn't see
my slip now for the next bit of the game.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, exactly. We didn't see it really at any point in the entire day sustained pressure from one end. Like, there was not a period where like Siraj replaced Bumrah, who was then replaced by Jadeja or something like that, where you at least one end you weren't leaking runs, because you can hunt wickets with Prasidh Krishna from one end and accept he'll go for 6 and over if at the other end you're going for 3. But that didn't happen. I mean, like there were like a couple of spells like where Shardul and Prasidh were bowling in tandem, or when Duckett and Root were in together, you had Jadeja bowling to England's 2 best players of spin, one set on over 100. And Shardul at the other end. And that actually is when the partnership was broken. So, like, maybe I don't know anything about cricket, but I also think Shardul's 2 wickets are complete, they're jokes, aren't they? I mean, like, one's dropped
the first one's got to be going for 4.
Yeah. And the other one's like a leg stump half volley that the guy's feathered. They're not repeatable wickets. I thought he could have even tried Jaiswal for an over at some point. Like, really mix it up. Let's see what happens. Like, the guy can bowl some leg spin. There's a lot of rough out there. You never know. Like, England have got egos. Sometimes you have to play on that. I think, like in T20 cricket, if you're the captain, you don't, generally speaking, have the opportunity to set the agenda. The game moves through some fairly fixed structures. You have the power play. Maybe you break the power play down and do first 3 overs of the power play with all 4 overs when it moves, and then the late power play. Then you've got your middle overs, and you can even break that down if you want. But there's clear structures, and the game doesn't tend to deviate too far away from them. You've got your 2 or 3 bowlers, maybe 4 bowlers that you want to use in each phase, and you're going to use them in an order. Like and you're going to have a field that you use those bowlers. That you use for those bowlers.
Or specific deliveries.
Yeah. In Test match cricket, like, sometimes you are just sort of waiting for a guy to get tired to change to who's bowling. Like that does happen. But sometimes you have the opportunity to set the agenda and be the person who dictates what's happening in the next half an hour of the game. And I don't think at any point in the entire day, Shub McGill did anything to dictate what would happen in the next
Completely
half an hour.
passive.
Yeah, like just waiting for stuff to happen. And also that's why India lost. I mean, India lost probably because they didn't catch the ball.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the simplest explanation.
Yeah.
Usually the right one.
And they lost because they collapsed twice. And they were trying to bat the full day yesterday. And had they done that, batted the extra 10 overs, I don't know. They get an extra 15, at least. Let's say they at least an extra 20 runs, and England then need to get 390 in a day. And I don't think they can do that. I think that then you force a situation where like it's either a draw or an India win. So there's two ways that they could have won that are besides Shubman Gill. But like having just watched an entire 85 overs or something of Shubman Gill noodling around out there, like it is a talking point. Like it was as you said, pretty flat.
Yeah,
I thought.
And obviously the batting collapses is a big problem, isn't it? You look at England's first innings, their numbers 8 to 11 scored 62 runs, and India's scored 9 across the entire match. Like, and you can probably throw Karen Nair and Ravi Jadeja in there if you like as well, because they didn't get 62 between them either, and that is a problem.
No, it was big. How did you feel during the run chase? Were you nervous?
When England had their little wobble and Harry Brook played that god awful shot to get out first ball to Shardul Thakur, I did have a small moment of concern, but I think there is an element where you're like, well, look, obviously this is just you always expect the worst outcome, don't you? You always expect your team to collapse, and I'd imagine throughout, you can try and think of what an India fan would be thinking at all of those moments, and it's usually this game is over. I mean, to be fair, they were saying that after the first wicket went down, which is probably fair enough, and it was 190 for 1. If I were England, I'd be saying this is over. India, rather, I'd be saying this is over as well. So I don't think it was particularly logical to be concerned about the outcome, but it's England, isn't it? And there was like bits of me being like, well, Ben Stokes is going to do something stupid. JB Smith is going to try and win it in 10 balls, and Joe Root will get Bumrah because that happens a lot. But no, they were very, very calm and composed and impressive. Harry Brook aside, like I say,
I did.
And Ollie Pope got a decent ball.
Yeah, I did see like on the internet, like all the neutral people basically like, well, that was inevitable. Like, obviously that was going to happen. All of the India fans were like, well, I knew we were going to lose from the first ball of the innings, and then all the England fans being like, can't believe we actually did it. I think probably from 150 for none onwards, England were fairly big favourites to win, but like it didn't really feel like that until under 50. Watching it was one of those ones like the sort of, if you're the team that is winning in that scenario, there is no, until the win is actually completed, nothing is going to really feel good, like, because the prospect of the most epic bottle of all time or throwing away this golden opportunity to do something amazing is like much worse than the potential joy from completing the chase. Like it would be the Schadenfreude that you'd have to sort of endure from the whole continent of Australia and the subcontinent of India, like, would be way worse than like Jamie Smith hitting Jadeja for 6 to win the game. And that probably is true, and that's why cricket is a bit of a weird game. Max, to round off, we've got a few questions that we're going to answer. Viber asks, no crowds at a 15,000 seater stadium. Calling this one of the greatest test matches would be a push. Any decent side would have put the match to bed on numerous occasions. That's what I mean from an India. I'm assuming Viber was an India fan. Like, that was not a foregone conclusion even with 100 runs to win, like India had a decent chance to like a wicket at that point would have, maybe a little bit less actually, because I think Stokes and when Stokes is out, that game is still live with 70 runs to win. Like the bowling team win that match decently regularly, and I think with the stadium thing, I think there were about 8,000 fans in. And you have to remember, it did rain all day, and it was really cold, and it's Tuesday. And people tend not to buy tickets to day 5 matches. It is a shame though. Like it would have been great if there'd been 15,000 people. I think if it was sunny, there probably would have been. Like
you're almost relying on people just turning up to fill it out, aren't you? And that's going to be tough. Like not everyone can just take the day off work to go down for a day at the cricket, sadly. But there was a decent number of people there. But yeah, a full house would have made it much more enjoyable. But it was still excellent.
Freddie says, is India just in that transitional changing of the guard period all elite sports teams go through? England were there a couple of years ago and maybe just a bit further down the track. Is that true?
I think there's definitely an element of that. I mean, obviously, the Rohit and Kohli points have been made ad infinitum in the wider media. Arguably, it's a changing in the guard that should have happened earlier. I think that's possibly the problem that India have got more than anything. I don't necessarily think that the players aren't capable. We've seen Jaiswal with the bat be immense, but you do wonder whether maybe if it had happened a year ago, 2 years ago, when perhaps it would have been a better time, they'd be a bit more settled in it and in a more more consistent environment. But that happens. Yeah, it happens to every team, and every team has to get over it. I'm more concerned about the bowling than the batting, and that is obviously where they have a lot of people in the squad on the tour, and they will be trying around a lot of things. So I think that is, if there's, I suppose the old guard, as you'd think of it, would be what, Shami and Ishant Sharma, and they're guys who've done well in England. So I think it's finding people who are able to perform in English conditions is part of it.
Orney, on a similar note, asks who should be replacing the next test for India, or no change at all. And I think that's quite tricky from an India perspective. Like, with the benefit of hindsight, obviously Shardul Thakur or Prasidh Krishna or both should have been replaced, and definitely Kuldeep should have been one of the bowlers used instead. I'd have replaced Shardul. I don't really see what the ads, wickets or no wickets in this circumstance, but like,
well, they put him in there for his batting, and he didn't bat well enough. So
with hindsight, you'd probably say, oh no, well, he did actually pick up a couple of wickets in the second innings, so I would replace Prasidh Krishna. Whatever, like I don't know if that necessarily means that at Edgbaston on Wednesday you pick Kuldeep Yadav. I don't think it's necessarily as simple as that. We don't know what the wicket there will be like. We'll have to, scope that out over the next few days. Like, when would the last leg spinner to have played at Edgbaston have been? Unless it was Kuldeep himself, would it be Yasir Shah for Pakistan, maybe?
Shadab Khan?
Maybe Shadab Khan is who I'm thinking of. Not
what?
Shah.
Yeah.
Or Shane Warne. Like, it's probably quite a long time. It's either one of them or it's Shane Warne, and I think so. You don't know, based on history, how Kuldeep will go. You don't know what type of pitch England will roll out, and you've already got one very competent spinner in the team in Jadeja. And I think you've got a more glaring hole in your pace bowling department. So I don't think it's as easy as just being like, oh, well, based on the first test, we'll swap this guy for this guy, and then the bowling will be solved.
Because they still also have to think about the balance, right? And whether do you still want that extra in the batting, because that 8 to 11 was kind of disastrous and did contribute in some way to India not winning the match. If you don't know, I'm thinking whether if you actually want that batting, then Nitish is the guy that you bring in, right? Because he's much better with the bat and probably got the same level of output with the ball. But in the same way as you couldn't really rely on Shardul with the ball to hold up an end or provide any real output, I don't think you'd expect the same from Nitish Kumar Reddy either. So I think it's tough. If anything, I'd say the most upside from the guys not in the squad, not in the team, rather, possibly Harshit Rana. A little bit of difference, a little bit of height, pace, bounce to get at England. He would be a good guy to employ the short ball role.
I think they've got to play him at Lords at least.
Yeah, I don't know about Prashant Krishna because there were moments where he did actually look quite dangerous, but England did take a liking to him and score very heavily off him. So there is a risk that is a little bit unusable. It's England have made it difficult for India for this selection, which I assume would have been part of the plan. So fair play to them, but yeah, there's no easy solutions. I think they will try and get Kuldeep in wherever they can, though, because he's the most obviously top. He's the most obviously top tier bowler that's not there. But yeah. I mean, like, you wouldn't play him at Lords, really, would you? That would be a bit weird.
No, and you probably wouldn't have thought you need to play him at Headingley either. But I wouldn't be surprised if he plays in the next match. I can't see that he's a downgrade on any of the options that they've got, bar Bumrah. They're not going to replace him. They're not going to replace Siraj with Kuldeep. I understand that, but I think as a bowling threat, at least then you've got one. If you've got Kuldeep. England, meanwhile, will have Archer, Atkinson, and Wood back at various points of the series. Archer bowled for Sussex yesterday. Should England make changes for Edgbaston? If Jofra Archer is available, I'm picking him 100%. But it's not necessarily easy. And if Atkinson's available as well, I think that'll be later in the series. I'll be picking him 100% as well. But it's not necessarily obvious who you get rid of. Maybe Josh Tongue. But
I think so. But he did a great job with the tail. If there's one thing that England have not been good at in recent years, you can't get rid of Wokes because he's the one bit of this. Even though he had a poor game, he is the one bit of this England side that is different in terms of swinging the ball and being that opening bowler that gets the ball to move. And opening the bowling with the new ball is a skill set, and England only have one of those guys in the team at the moment. I don't think Josh Tongue or Bryden Cast, it's really their game. So you can't get rid of Chris Wokes. Also, what he offers with the bat at number 8 is shouldn't be undervalued. So I mean, I think he's got plenty of rope. Atkinson and Cast is kind of the where that replacement would go, isn't it? Which it would be, I think, on a little harsh on Bryden Cast because he did well and he looked good, but Atkinson has got a bit more body of work behind him.
I think you could have Cast, Atkinson, and Archer as a trio.
Yeah.
I think you could drop Wokes and Tongue in that scenario.
Atkinson.
By the way, England have got quite a selection
fairly
of
fearsome.
Sort of average or slightly above average bowlers to go to, but don't have a Bumrah. And India have got some guys who go on the bus and a Bumrah. It's quite a nice dynamic
comparison. Yeah. Is it a weak link or a strong link situation?
A couple of questions. One from a lot of Lions, one from Rhubarb about the rest of the series. What does it mean now for the rest of the series?
It is
5-0. Are they going to win the Ashes 5-0?
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, look at Australia in disarray. Don't know who's opening the batting. Chopping and changing here, left, right, and centre. Jofra Archer is going to take 100 wickets. It is big, I think, for the series because, already put overs into Bumrah, and there's a bit of a gap until the next test, so he's got time to recover. But that is part of it, and I think just there will be a bit of panic, I think, selection-wise, about what they do with the bowling. And that's never a good position to be in one game in. I mean, India could come straight back and win it because they should be confident enough that their batting was able to pile on loads of runs, and they should have been in winning positions at various points in this Test match. And a lot of the reasons that they've lost it are things that are entirely correctable themselves. So they shouldn't panic, but you can just see it happening, can't you? And sort of weird selections happening, rotating the bowling attack too much. And England, they've gone from a position where they shouldn't be winning this Test match to winning this Test match. So it's a missed opportunity for India. And you'd think that playing away in England, there will be a limited number of opportunities for them to be on top across the series. So if you let it go, it'll be disappointing. So England have got a bonus victory here for this series, and that's definitely going to play a part. But
I think
come back.
I think a lot of people. I think we said 3-2 England or 3-1 England was a.
I think I said 2
outcome. Did you say 2-2?
I went for some weather.
I don't think that what we saw in this test suggests that India are should give up on the series.
No.
It's obviously gutting if you are an India fan to lose that test with the fielding errors and having scored all those runs and having put a big target up and the pitch is doing a little bit and you don't get it done. Obviously it sucks, but it's a pretty narrow margin. It's a pretty narrow margin, especially I think a narrow margin between between a draw and an England win. Had India managed to bat for an extra 20 overs in either innings, even with all the fielding mistakes, it makes it really hard for England to win that match, even if they want to play baseball stuff. Probably it ends up being a draw. I think the tricky thing for India is forcing a win. I think take all your catches, that will help. But there were big periods of today, and there were big periods of day 2 and 3 where wickets looked pretty hard to come by. Whereas for England, when they did manage to break through, and it wasn't easy necessarily, there were India's batters did dominate big periods. But when they did break through, they were able to wrap things up, and it looked like they knew what they were doing. And wickets came sort of thick and fast a couple of times for England. You've got to take 20 wickets to win a Test match, and I think that's the factor that we're still a little bit unsure about. And if Bumrah's only going to play 3 of the matches, and I think that is more likely now than it was at the beginning of this match, because he's bowled the second most overs since his back surgery in I think 2022. And the last time he bowled sort of anything near this number, or he bowled 53 overs at Melbourne, I think, and then got injured in the next match. So, it is a big workload they put into him. I don't see. I think it's less likely, basically, that he now plays 4 matches, which diminishes that India bowling attack even more.
I think he plays the next one and then skips the third,
and then plays 1, and then sees where the series is for the final match. Yeah, I think that's a fair possibility. Max, I think we've covered all of the angles. Great win for England, great batting by Duckett, a bit listless by India. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, just thanks for joining us as always on the stream. It was more than you predicted, Jack. We got
I said there'd be 15 people. Yeah.
I thought so normally more than doubled that. Look at that, peaking at 33. So thanks for joining us. Head over to Patreon to support us at the Cricket Pod. Subscribe, like, Spotify, give us a rating, all of that good stuff. And looking forward to the next one. Good start. Goodbye. A great start to the series.
Great start.